Welcome to Podkey Fantasy Football, where camp hype meets actual draft logic. A lot of August fantasy advice is really just confidence theatre. The useful edge is figuring out which market moves are backed by role and volume, and which ones are just vibes with shoulder pads. The Stefon Diggs signing matters more for Washington's offense than for Diggs as a standalone fantasy savior. The confirmed part is simple. 1 year, reportedly up to 12 million, age 32, and coming off a season where he wasn't a full route every down alpha anymore. But the route rate context cuts both ways. He only ran about 65% of routes in New England, yet the efficiency stayed strong, especially on a per-route basis and in moving the chains. So if Washington uses him more in the slot and intermediate areas, instead of asking for vintage vertical digs, the rebound case is pretty reasonable. What's probably overstated is the idea that this crushes Terry McLaurin. McLaurin may lose a few targets, but he could gain easier coverage and better overall efficiency if the offense is more functional. The bigger target squeeze is for the secondary pieces, the shorter area volume guys, the players who are benefiting from a thinner receiving room. For fantasy drafts, Diggs as a bench or late-round receiver makes more sense than treating him like a top 12 name from 3 years ago. The bargain argument works if ADP stays anchored to old concerns after the news. And Jayden Daniels is the real winner. More credible weapons raise both the passing floor and the weekly ceiling, which is why moving him into that QB4 to QB6 neighborhood holds up better than a full-blown MVP leap. The wide receiver market starts with one uncomfortable fact. Top-end receiver production was scarcer last season. If only 11 wideouts cleared 15 PPR points per game after multiple years with 16 to 18, then securing a real WR1 early becomes more valuable, especially in full PPR and start 3 formats. That doesn't mean force receiver in every room. It means know what you're giving up if you pass on the tier. The best process advice here is still the least glamorous. Draft in tiers, mock from different draft slots, and build with format in mind. A goal like 5 receivers by round 10, or at minimum 2 top 25 types, isn't a law. It's a response to how hard it has become to find true difference-making receiver scoring later. That late-round point matters because the hit rates have thinned out. You can still take swings, but the middle rounds are doing more of the heavy lifting now. Rounds 3 through 5 look unusually dense with receiver upside, and that changes how you can build. McConkey, Emeka Egbuka, Luther Burden, T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, depending on room dynamics, and sometimes Zay Flowers all live in that conversation. The common thread isn't just talent, it's role clarity relative to price. Egbuka gets buzz because Mike Evans is gone, and the path to an immediate Z role is cleaner. Burden's supporters are buying efficiency signals, plus a fit in Ben Johnson's offense. McConkey's case is volume, especially if he becomes the Chargers' target leader. Josh Downs belongs in the same bucket as a volume bet, if injuries open things up in Indianapolis. The takeaway isn't that all these players hit, it's that this pocket of the board gives you multiple WR2 paths without paying WR1 prices. Flowers is one of the better cases where contract news and underlying metrics actually point in the same direction. The extension is real commitment, but the stronger argument is that his route participation, yards per route run, and targets per route run were already top tier. Baltimore only threw around 420 passes last year, way under a more normal team total. If that creeps upward, Flowers doesn't need a philosophical reinvention to gain 15 or 20 targets. The remaining question is touchdowns, because Mark Andrews still looms over red zone distribution. So the bullish case is strong on volume and efficiency. The caution is mostly about whether the scoring catches up. Tight end is where price fade and player fade really need to stay separate. The clearest actionable threshold here is about 7 targets per game. Historically, high-end fantasy tight ends usually need that kind of volume to get into true difference-maker territory. That's why the aggressive Colston-Loveland projections matter. If you buy something like 126 targets, then you're not drafting a name, you're drafting a workload that can win the position. Trey McBride being elite doesn't automatically make him the best pick at cost. If the room is paying TE1 prices for safety and the position is deeper this year, the opportunity cost gets real fast. Brock Bowers has similar ceiling logic with a different set of quarterback and coordinator risks. Harold Fannin is the kind of mid-tier bet people keep circling because the path to usable volume is plausible. The broad strategy makes sense. If an elite tight end falls, fine. If not, waiting for volume-based upside is a stronger argument this year than paying a premium just to feel settled. Training camp should change rankings, but only when the signal is strong enough. Consistent beat reporting, 11-on-11 usage, pre-season routes and snaps, and a player returning from PUP at near full speed matter more than one viral rep in shorts. And negative health news should usually get a little extra weight, because August coverage naturally leans optimistic. That's where ADP inefficiencies come from. Markets are slow to react to real information and too quick to react to shiny nonsense. Diggs is one example. Malik Neighbors is another, where the talent case may stay top 12 while the ADP drifts on ACL caution until the practice reports materially improve. Cross-platform differences matter too. Yahoo, Sleeper, and Home League defaults do not price players the same way, so value is always relative to the room you're actually drafting in. Quarterback strategy is still format-driven more than player-driven. In standard 1QB redraft, waiting remains the better-supported default unless an elite option falls well past market. In Superflex, that advice flips. Daniels benefits from Diggs. Lamar still carries an elite ceiling, but the price has to absorb some offensive and coaching uncertainty rather than pretending those questions don't exist. At receiver, Rashee Rice is one of the bigger pressure test names. The optimistic projections assume a lot of stability despite injury concern, possible suspension risk, off-field and conditioning questions, and a role that may be more fragile in a balanced offense than people want to admit. That doesn't prove a collapse. It does make WR7 or WR11 style projections look harder to defend than something in the low-end WR2 range. San Francisco is a different kind of warning sign. The issue isn't one player, it's roster fragility across the offense, plus injuries piling up and less margin for everything to click. That makes Brock Purdy more of a let-him-fall pick than a player to chase early just because we recognize the system. Late-round targets still matter, but the standard should be upside relative to cost, not just rookie excitement. Jordan Tyson keeps showing up because the route profile and zone separation fit seem cleaner for his offense than some pure field stretcher prospects. Carnell Tate offers a higher-end ceiling case, while names like Stripling, Denzel Boston, Parker Washington, and Trey Harris are more about cheap paths to early volume if things break right. The same principle applies to backfields. Ambiguity can create value, but committees also stay committees all the time. So Jonathan Brooks, Jacksonville swings, or a Jonah Coleman stash makes sense as bets, as long as you're pricing in the real possibility that the takeover never fully happens. The edge right now is staying flexible enough to update when real information lands. That's it for Podkey Fantasy Football. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.